Hello, everyone. This is Shasta Hensley with the Kentucky Department of Education's Office of Special Education and Early Learning. Thank you for joining us as we share the latest edition of our Fall Instructional Strategies webcast series. This webcast is a collaborative effort between the Kentucky Department of Education and the Kentucky Special Education Regional Cooperatives. The team is providing a rich collection of ideas, supports, strategies, and resources. As a disclaimer, these resources have been utilized and helpful to other teachers in supporting vocabulary instruction. Please note the KDE or the co-ops do not necessarily endorse these products. Let's go ahead and get started.
Specially designed instruction, strengthening vocabulary routines through any lens. Welcome to this session as we explore ways to leverage reading tasks to impact student learning. This session is a collaboration of the Kentucky Special Education Cooperative's Literacy Consultants. I'm Dina Cole-Welsh, a literacy consultant on the special education team at Southeast South Central. And with me today are three other literacy consultants. Ladies, please introduce yourselves.
My name is Chastity Craft. I'm the Special Education Literacy Consultant at Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative.
My name is Erica Price. I'm the Literacy Consultant with Central Kentucky Educational Cooperative.
And I am Laura Smith, an Instructional Consultant with the Special Ed Division at Central Kentucky Educational Cooperative.
Okay, take a look at this slide. This illustration, created by the Kentucky Department of Education, represents a snapshot of the different aspects of specially designed instruction. This session will focus on the design and delivery of vocabulary routines. The purpose or learning intentions of this session is for educators to further develop a routine for intentionally selecting appropriate vocabulary based on the 3 tiers of vocabulary instruction, specifically for Tier 2, and to also acquire steps for effective planning and delivery of explicit instruction, whether in a virtual or in-person setting. Viewers will also have access to a toolbox of strategies. These resources are appropriate for both special education and general education teachers, as well as speech pathologists. Let's take a moment and connect to the starting point for planning specially designed instruction. For example, after reviewing the students' reading progress monitoring data, the committee can determine the strengths and needs as compared to same age peers. This data identifies areas of needs for this student. For example, the student Audrey has difficulty with identifying and defining roots and affixes. She's unable to use context clues to clarify the meaning of unknown words, multiple meaning words, and phrases. Further data analysis indicated that she also had difficulty in determining the meaning of grade-appropriate, general academic, and non-domain-specific words and phrases. While the student has multiple areas related to reading, the Admissions and Release Committee, the ARC, will prioritize the skill deficit to determine the IEP goal, which will increase student achievement to meet grade level standards. And just remember, the IEP is not the curriculum. It is the focused program for the student to support access to the general curriculum. Explicit instruction will be the high leverage practice of focus for this session. High leverage practices in special education are 22 practices that are evidence-based and effective in all grade levels and content areas. Let me elaborate just a moment on this particular idea, because we are very used to hearing about research-based and evidence-based strategies that are specific to certain grade levels or content areas where the research was conducted and evidence collected. And this is sometimes a limitation with a strategy because you don't teach in that grade level or content area that research and evidence showed was the most effective. However, with high leverage practices, we have the confidence that the practice is evident in any grade level or content area. You can find more information on high leverage practices at the website address on the slide, or go to our resource page at the end of the PowerPoint. Let's talk a little bit more about explicit instruction, specifically the definition in relation to vocabulary. Systematic means being selective in which vocabulary words are chosen for a focus. Consider the learning intentions in the unit or lesson, and then determine which vocabulary is the most critical to teach explicitly. When we consider the 3 tiers of vocabulary, decide which vocabulary is essential and how can we be most efficient for students to access rigorous core curriculum. Routines are key to support delivery of instruction. As teachers, we can evaluate how students respond and determine our next instructional move. In other words, do I need to reteach? Is my feedback supporting the need to clarify misconceptions? Routines support prediction and can set the student up for success. More information can be found in Kentucky's IEP and Lesson Plan Development Handbook. Both special education and general education teachers would benefit from exploring this resource. These are the 6 steps of explicit instruction that can be found in Kentucky's IEP Lesson Plan and Development Handbook. The vocabulary delivery routine that will be shared today will model steps 3 and 4.
Let's take a look at what a vocabulary selection routine may look like. When designing instruction, it is imperative to spend the time reviewing the words in the unit. Even if the unit of study has a set of suggested words, review it to determine what words the students need for understanding. The students' needs should drive the word selection, not the curriculum's predetermined list. Vocabulary development is a gatekeeper in providing opportunities for students to the access of the general curriculum. This could be the knowledge of stored information about meanings, which could include pronunciation of words necessary for communication. The vocabulary development is a primary determinant of reading comprehension and key in cross-content areas. The image shown here came from the book Bringing Words to Life to explain the 3 tiers of vocabulary instruction, which begin with Tier 1, or everyday words. Tier 2, high-frequency words that occur across contexts, and Tier 3 that often pertain to a specific content area. During the vocabulary routine, focus on Tier 2 high-frequency words that occur across contexts. These words will enhance student comprehension of the text. Pause your video for just a moment to review the vocabulary selection list. Some educators may ask, why 4 to 5 words instead of 10 or more? A best practice in teaching vocabulary is to narrow the total words to 4 or 5 Tier 2 words to help students learn, comprehend, and move vocabulary words into a student's long-term memory, which we will demonstrate in the next few slides. The purpose is to introduce the steps for vocabulary selection. What most teachers struggle with is step one, yet it is critical to accelerate learning opportunities. I encourage you to take a moment, write down these 4 steps to use later during this session. For our vocabulary selection, we will be using the book Enemy Pie. You'll find a link on the reference document to access the resources. This text selection may be on grade level if you're in the 4th grade, but instructional level for other students. We will be referring to the 4 guidelines previously reviewed during the word selection process. Then we will determine the 4 or 5 words to be given in-depth explicit instruction. This is an example of key vocabulary that the PLC is discussing to determine critical words that assist in understanding and comprehending the story. On this slide, using the guidelines, I'm going to model the teaching selection process so you can hear my think aloud to choose 4 to 5 words for explicit instruction. So as we're reviewing the words, notice the words trampoline and boomerang can be introduced with a picture, pronunciation, and demonstration. Once the pronunciation of recipe has been introduced, it connected to the word ingredients. The word invited can be introduced with real-life examples that students can connect to birthday parties, ceremonies, and family gatherings. Horrible may be a word that once disgusting is explicitly taught, the students can connect as a synonym. Earthworms could be introduced with pronunciation, word parts, definition, and visual supports. The word perfect can be illustrated with verbal and visual examples. The focus that we have selected for explicit instruction will be on enemy, disgusting, nervous, and relieved. There could be a variance in the words selected based on the knowledge of the students. The intent of this selection is to focus on Tier 2 words that are going to aid in comprehension the most.
Now that we have reviewed how to select and design vocabulary lessons, let's discuss the delivery of the vocabulary instructional routine. When thinking about explicitly teaching vocabulary to aid in comprehension, there are 4 important steps once vocabulary selection is complete. We are going to model each of the 4 steps. How many steps do you have in your vocabulary routine? This statement is very important in thinking about vocabulary development. Poor working memory will be a barrier for students who aren't able to retrieve the pronunciation of a word. Teachers may need to provide pronunciation opportunities for students to practice, or they will have difficulty retaining and comprehending. Moving into the vocabulary routine, step 1 is introduce the word's pronunciation. First, the teacher displays the word for the students. Next, the teacher reads the word and provides a visual cue, such as a hand gesture or a card to signal for the students to repeat the word. Then, the teacher models the scooping motion of syllables of the word. The students replicate the scooping motion. And finally, the student models tapping the words multiple times and then cues the students to mimic the tapping. Now we will take a look at step 2, which is to introduce the word's meaning. For today's training purposes, we have provided a dictionary definition. This example demonstrates how we use the word meaning to restate it in student-friendly terms. Why do we use a student-friendly definition? It is explicit and uses terms familiar to the student to make connections and aid in comprehension. Morphology is the study of words, how they are formed, and their relationship to other words in the same language. It analyzes the structure of words and word parts, such as roots, prefixes, and suffixes. Understanding the meaning of word parts can aid in the comprehension of vocabulary, but may not always be applicable for all words, such as enemy. It is critical to ensure teachers go deeper with morphology, especially in middle and secondary grades. When we look at this example of the word disgusting, we see the meanings of the prefix, root, and suffix. Therefore, a definition could be derived of disgusting as the act of not liking the taste. Step 3 is to illustrate the word with examples and non-examples. Just to clarify, the word illustrate means to explain or make something clear by using examples, charts, or pictures. If it is appropriate to a vocabulary word, the first step would be to show a concrete example, like an object or physical movement, to demonstrate the meaning and make a connection to the word. For the word enemy, a concrete example may not be immediately available. American Sign Language is a good resource for finding prompts. The next step would be to illustrate the word with a visual example. Here are 3 different representations for the word enemy. These images should prompt discussion as to what is happening in each one. As we continue with step 3, we are going to share verbal examples that students are able to connect and relate to. These connections should be something in which students are familiar. And with the next step is to share non-examples. If Becca could share the non-examples, thank you. The non-examples of the word in which students can relate to in order to discriminate between a true example and what it is not. It's important to remember to allow time to discuss why they are enemies and why they are not. You may have a few struggling readers who cannot discriminate between characteristics and traits. Some may need more elaboration to reinforce the student's ability to provide evidence of their thinking and rationales of why the characters are or are not enemies. Making connections and building background will increase connections beyond working memory and support deeper comprehension. In the previous slide, we discussed why the characters were enemies and why they are not enemies, which leads us to step 4, checking students' understanding. This is the explicit part of the instruction. Take into consideration the student's familiarity with the text. Options a teacher may select to increase student engagement are turn to your partner and share. Be sure that each student has a role in the partner participation. Partner 1 and Partner 2 both need active roles to support engagement for both students. You can write your answer on a dry erase board. Some virtual options can include, but certainly not limited to, annotation tools, chat box, reaction tools, visual response board to share with your group, or Pear Deck. You may ask yourself, why is it important to elicit responses from students during the vocabulary routine? Pause the slide and take a moment to reflect on that question. You can check your ideas with what you see on the screen as possible answers.
This is a great visual showing different ways for students to respond. It will take some planning to add this to your routine. Several of these ideas are explained in detail in Anita Archer's book, Explicit Instruction, Chapter 7. More references are available in the resources that accompany this presentation. Additional ideas for virtual engagement for online could be using a poll feature where students identify examples and non-examples. Students could also respond in the chat box, a Padlet, or even Flipgrid. Another explicit instruction component that we modeled for you during the vocabulary routine was the gradual release of responsibility using the steps I do it, we do it, you do it. When the teacher models how to pronounce the word and the understanding of the definition, and then guiding the students with examples and non-examples, which led to the you do it to allow the teacher to check for understanding. Becca, next slide, please. Thank you. This is just a reminder to connect the student's IEP when planning specially designed instruction. We need to think about the different instructional platforms in delivering the SDI beyond in person. This current slide is one example of a way to plan for instruction to meet the vocabulary goal on an IEP. This example was acquired from the spring webcast titled SDI in an NTI state. Teachers will need to have a routine for both virtual instruction as well as non-virtual, where students may have limited access to technology. A link to the webcast and resources can be found on the resource page. This slide includes a brief definition of mnemonics. Mnemonic instruction is a set of strategies designed to help students improve their memory of new information. Mnemonics instruction links new information to prior knowledge through the use of visual and/or acoustic cues. More information can be found in the IEP Lesson Plan Development Handbook and the Literacy Resource page. We welcome you to pause this recording and complete this vocabulary routine using the word travel. What will your cue be for student responses? Will it be a hand signal or will it be a colored card? Remember, it's necessary to explicitly teach these cues to the class. During this session, we walk through how to develop a routine for selecting vocabulary and the steps to strengthen your own vocabulary instructional routines. For additional information, you can visit our literacy resource page. To access the literacy resource page, you may use the QR code by opening your phone's camera, or you can also access through the link provided on this slide. We thank you for watching this webcast. Please use the QR code to provide feedback. You can either use the QR code or follow the link. If you have further questions about the explicit vocabulary instruction, please contact your regional special education cooperative. Thank you.